Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast, a midweek episode about a race. Not every week that we have one, but the 1st of November is a national day off in Belgium, and that means that it's a good reason to organize a cross. As is tradition, we were on the Koppenberg on the 1st of November to race the first round of the X2O Badkamers Trofee. I was there in person and it was super entertaining, especially the men's race, which I unfortunately couldn't watch in person there, but it was so good, such a good day out. Isam, thank you for being here to discuss the racing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
If you hear some background, I was at the Koppenbergcross today with the Eurocross Academy. The American riders are flying back home tomorrow. They are busy packing their bikes in the background. So excuse me if there is a bit of noise going on in the background. But where to start? It was an amazing day. Maybe let's first not go into the racing, but a bit of my own experiences there. The organization said 15,000 spectators, and the numbers this season might have been a little bit inflated that I saw for a couple of crosses. For instance, Waterloo Fayetteville, I don't believe the official numbers that they gave for that. 10,000 spectators for Nacht van Woerden also doesn't seem realistic, but today 15,000 spectators. When I was there, I did have the feeling that there could be above 10,000 spectators there because boy, it was packed.
Yeah, definitely on the broadcast it looked very good as well. I mean, I think that in at Mechelen already we had quite some spectators already, but I think today, especially at the men's race, at the women's race, it was already quite full. But I think the peak was definitely reached when the men's were starting, and in Belgium it's obviously a national day, so they have a day off, so they can obviously use that spare time to go to the race. But I think in general it was pretty promising, and I hope that we can see the tendency of these races being with this amount of spectators and the enthusiasm that is right now in the races. Because if you are watching it on the broadcast, it just adds up on the experience already, and is just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it was super packed and the atmosphere was electric throughout the women's race already. People were just screaming, and if you've never been to cross, I'll try and explain what the cross atmosphere is. There's a bunch of people screaming and shouting for every rider. On the Koppenberg, the course is relatively compact. You can see them twice if you can walk over. So first, Van Empel is passing on the left when she's in a downhill. Everybody is watching and shouting and screaming, and there's a lot of beer smell and smoke. And then when she's left and the other front runners have left and they know that she's coming close towards the Koppenberg climb, the entire pack of people walks from the left to the right and goes to stand at the Koppenberg, and they cheer up the Koppenberg with the same atmosphere. It's amazing, and it was super nice to see the course become more crowded throughout the day. I was there for the juniors race already, and there I saw Androgas take the win. The American rider won by almost a minute. It was super impressive to see. Glad to see the progression on his end, as I've been following through Tabor training session in Alphen, then a fourth place in Maasmechelen, and now the win. Super exciting to see, and an American prospect in the men's side is, I think, exactly what the sport needs to potentially become a bit more popular again in the United States.
Yeah, I think personally that that is definitely a good thing, and overall the podium with the juniors was definitely something that is very promising. I mean, not a Belgium in the top four. I think the names that we have seen also with Vaclav, or how you have to pronounce that name, but the Czech rider, and Oliver Akers as well. Barnabas is also riding some top tens already, so I think that that is definitely promising. But I think in general that for Andrew, it's a very nice line upwards, and a very promising progress in my opinion. And I think that is kind of the impulse maybe that the Americans will can definitely use. It's always nice to watch your sport and to be supportive in a way, but I think that when you have somebody from your own countries, racing and doing well, that will always make the sport more interesting, and will put more people behind the sport and behind a certain rider. And I think that that's definitely something that will help. But yeah, it's still juniors, so he has some time to grow even more, and I think that we should give him the time, and don't put a lot of pressure on him. But it's definitely promising, the way it's heading right now.
Let's go and talk about the men's race then. It might not have even been the most interesting race of the day, since the under 23 race was also insane, with Victor van der Putten pulling off an insane comeback on Joran Viseur in the final lap. But the men's race also had an insane comeback in the final Koppenberg by Lars van der Haar. But before we got there, early on in the race we had a situation of a pretty big leading pack, as has almost been the tradition this season. Not an entirely fast start as we usually see with Mathieu van der Poel at the start, but more a first couple of laps where the riders are looking at each other, checking if the course has changed, seeing if they're all right. But eventually we got to a situation with, I think, 6 or 7 leaders, where the expected names, Michael van Toerenhout, Lars van der Haar, together with Eli Iserbyt, of course. Jens Adams was up there, and then the two under 23 riders of the Baloise Trek Lions, Thibaut Nys and Pim Ronhaar, were there as well. Nys and Ronhaar tried to play the team game against Pauwelsauze, but ultimately it became clear that Van der Haar, Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout were the strongest out of those riders. Van Toerenhout in the beginning had a bit of issues in terms of keeping up with Iserbyt and Van der Haar, so those two rode away. But then there was a chain issue for Eli Iserbyt in a corner, which meant that Lars van der Haar opened the gap. Iserbyt was able to close that, and then basically out of the blue, Van Toerenhout was back as well with 2 laps to go. We went into the final lap with these 3 leaders and things were getting tense. There were no team tactics being played by Pauwelsauze. It was pure racing. It was what we love to see. Men against men. And then in the final lap, Van Toerenhout was putting them under pressure. And Van der Haar, under pressure, made a mistake. He crashed. He put in a bit too much of his front brake in a downhill corner and slid away. Van Toerenhout opened the gap. He looked to be on course towards victory as they went up the final time on the Koppenberg. He started that ascent with 6 seconds ahead of Van der Haar. But Iserbyt, he thought, I need to launch for second place. He went at the bottom of the climb, but Van der Haar responded. He had something left in the tank. He went all out past Iserbyt and then even closed the gap to Van Toerenhout in the final stretch of the Koppenberg. He passed Van Toerenhout and won the Koppenbergcross, ahead of Eli Iserbyt, who also passed his teammate Michael van Toerenhout, who had to settle for third. What a race, Issam. Where do I begin? I think it's the most entertaining race we've had this season. Van der Haar taking that win, long overdue win, just before the European Championships, getting his sportive revenge for the punctures in Ruddervoorde, which eventually led to Iserbyt winning. What a race. Give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, indeed, quite the race. I mean, for Van der Haar it was quite tricky in the end, definitely with Iserbyt and Van Toerenhout, and try to to make sure that he wasn't compromised by the two of them in terms of tactics. And then obviously he had the knee fall that hampered his chances a little bit, and then it was almost sure that Van Toerenhout would take the victory there. And I was looking at Van Toerenhout just before the Koppenberg, and he was like very small gear. I was like, he might be already thinking too much about that climb, and he might have felt already that it was going to be quite difficult to hold them off with the gap that he had. And Van der Haar rode it superbly, the Koppenberg, and was able to eventually beat the two. But I think overall the race was very fast. I mean, the gaps in general with the men's category was not really Koppenberg-esque in a way. It was, I think till halfway we had still a group of 6-7 guys. So I think that was definitely fun to see in a way, and I think that gave the fans also very something to look at, which was very nice. And I think the race in overall was exciting and was super tensional in a way, and I think in the end the best had won.
Van der Haar definitely had something left in the tank for that final ascent of the Koppenberg. The way he went up, it was just special. It was something else. I haven't seen that in quite a while, and I'm happy that he gets his win. However, do you maybe think that Michael van Toerenhout, when he rewatches the race, will have some kind of harsh feelings against Eli Iserbyt? Because at the bottom of the climb, it is Eli Iserbyt that starts to launch and initiate the long sprint of Van der Haar. Do you think that maybe Van Toerenhout will look back at that and think, hey, wait, I've played the nice guy, the good cop, your perfect teammate in the team tactics this entire season, and now once I have the opportunity to win the Koppenbergcross, a mythical cross, you do this against me? Hey, that's not nice.
I think he personally would be more gutted the fact that he was not able to hold that gap, because I think that at a certain point he definitely was thinking about winning, but it was a difficult situation for Iserbyt. I mean, Van Toornhout gets that gap because of Van der Haar having that small crash, and then Iserbyt probably felt that he had good legs, and sees Van Toornhout in front, doesn't really know what's going on. It's a classification on time. Yeah, it's very difficult for Iserbyt at the moment what to do, and you saw a lot of hesitation in trying to overtake Van der Haar. Then he kind of stayed just alongside, and Van der Haar just didn't even care about what Iserbyt was doing. He was just climbing with his own pace, and slowly but surely going to Van Toornhout. And when he realized, Van Toornhout is not going to make it till the top, he accelerated. But just overall, I mean, Van der Haar, the way he was reacting on the gap when Van Toornhout got away, and he tried to play a bit of poker with Iserbyt, the way he closed that as well was quite impressive. I think 3/4 into the race, and I think just overall, Van der Haar was really looking good, and quite important, I think, for him, and a good feeling he will keep after this race towards the European Championships.
Yeah, the entire race, the Paul Sauser guys didn't really play the team tactics, and I love it. I'm all for it. Van Toornhout versus Iserbyt versus Van der Haar makes it much more entertaining. So I don't think Van Toornhout will have any harsh feelings against Iserbyt, because the entire race he didn't play the team tactics. Iserbyt didn't play the team tactics. So it was just a good day out, and ultimately he was cooked. His legs were already dead when he started that climb, and then the Koppenberg is brutal. It doesn't know mercy. It doesn't know what it is. It will just kill you right there on the spot, and it did with Van Toornhout in the final 100 of meters. He does eventually end third. He pays the price for maybe needing to chase a bit after what seemed to be a rough start to the race for him, and he only really started actually proper racing. We only saw Van Toornhout, the real Van Toornhout, in the last third of the race. Before that, he was on the back foot and struggling. So, no, I don't think that there's anybody who has anything to blame. The Koppenberg is a very honest course, so everybody comes where they deserve. And with that sprint that Van der Haar had, he doesn't deserve anything less than the victory. So, yeah, it is what it is. And Paul Sauser guys will be regrouping and looking to think how they are going to become European champion this weekend. Then let's talk about some youngsters. Thibaut Nys and Pim Ronhaar, both racing with the elites here. They were having a pretty good role in the race in the early phases of the race, but ultimately faded a bit. What do you think was behind that? Did they set out too hard, or what do you think was up with them today?
They just tried, and they were having fun racing at the front. I think, definitely Nys was really going for it at the beginning of the race, even trying to get around Iserbyt and leading the race for a brief moment as well. So, I think they were just having fun, and Ronhaar played the race a bit smarter, in my opinion. He was just that little more conservative with his energy, and that I think also gave him the position ahead of Thibaut and also of Lokes, because both Lokes and Nys were really going for it, and I think that Ronhaar was just little bit more conservative with his energy. But I think that for these guys, it's on a parcours like this, on the Koppenberg, which is so brutal, you cannot expect them to race for an hour the way they were doing in the beginning of the race, and it was kind of in line with the expectations. But I definitely think that they were riding a very, very solid race, all three of them, to be honest.
But I have a question for you on that, because we know that the X2O Trophy is the most important series for the Baloise Trek team. It's hosted by Golazzo. The X2O Badkamers is actually a sponsor of their team. It's super important for them. They hadn't won a televised cross on the men's side this season. Do you think that maybe Sven Nys before the race went to his riders and gave a Mikel Arteta-like speech, like we've seen in All or Nothing Arsenal on Amazon Prime, where he goes, "Guys, Jurgen Mettepenning has been taking the piss with us. Have you seen what he said in the media? He said we have no right to speak because we have no wins. We can't complain. We should be answering with our legs. We have won all televised crosses. Have you seen what they said about me? They said that I'm sitting in the TV studio taking away attention from him. Not because I'm a good rider, but that I steal his attention. The media love me, and they don't love him. Do you see that? We should respond to that with our legs today. Koppenberg, our sponsor, go for it today. Like, he's really delivering maybe such a speech before the race, and then that he really says to these young guns in the beginning, all or nothing. We're going to terrorize Paul Sauser. We're going to be there in numbers and pull the reverse card on them. This time it's our turn to have the numbers. We're going to react on everything. And if you explode and fade towards the back end of the top 10, it doesn't matter. It's an X2O trophy. We need to get Lars in a good position. Any chance of anything like that happening?
I mean, I think they they definitely know that this is, like you said, is one of the more important classifications for them, or the most important for them. But like for Nice, for example, he doesn't need the motivation. This is for him. It's a special race. His father won it 9 times. He wants to perform here, and Van der Haar is in a really good form. And if it wasn't for the puncture in Ruddervoorde, he would have won Ruddervoorde. So they are in a good flow, but they were kind of unfortunate. And the same goes for Ron Haar as well. I mean, Ron Haar in the under 23 in Maasmechelen was second behind Nice, also showed good form. And I think that today we just see a continuation of that. And they were definitely in the beginning of the race showing the team colors, and it might be some sort of a rivalry that they feel against Paul Sauser, especially after the words of Mette Penning over the couple of weeks. And it's difficult to say if they really feel the animosity of that. But there were some moments where you could see Ron Haar and Nice. I think even it was Ron Haar that grabbed the hand of Van Toerenhout in lap 2 or lap 3 when Van Toerenhout was trying to get through the middle there. And they are standing their ground, or they're trying to stand their ground, and they are showing, look, we are also here. We wanna also defend the team colors, and you guys are not going to dictate what's going to happen in the race. And I think that is only good to see, as long as it stays respectful. And it's if we keep it going like this, it will definitely still be a couple of interesting races that will be coming up in the near future.
Yeah, I don't look into it all too much in the grabbing the hand or slight push towards Van Toerenhout. It looked pretty normal. There was no fuss about it afterwards, so I don't think we should give too much attention to it. I do, maybe I was just far-fetched in my theory of Nice really getting these riders all eager for the race, but I would just love to imagine, just already imagining Nice giving such a speech to his riders before the race. I would just think it would be amazing, but probably it didn't happen. But I was just wondering if maybe it was an extra bit of eagerness today, because in the beginning of the race they were really going at it, and it was a bit hard to judge what was going on, and is this really full pace or is this half pace, and will these riders get dropped? It turned out to be the second thing, and ultimately they get the win with Van der Haar. So we will see Van der Haar focusing on the X2O trophy for the rest of the season, I think. Let's look at our entire top 10 then. Lars van der Haar taking the win ahead of Eli Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout, as we just discussed. Very strong 4th place for Jens Adams ahead of Pim Ronhaar. 6th place went to the Koppenberg specialist Lander Looks. He already ended 7th here last year and did well in the under 23 categories previously. 7th place, good result for Thibaut Nys ahead of Toon van der Bos and Thomas Mien. And the 10th place is for Niels van der Putten. 2 names I want to discuss here. Let's start by Jens Adams. 4th place, very, very good showing for him today on the Koppenberg.
A very, good race in a way, the way he made sure that he wasn't ahead of himself in the beginning of the race, and just the last part of the race he was super strong, even closed down that gap to the 3 in front that were kind of looking more to each other than really going for it. But I think the gap was going down to still 12 seconds or something. So he showed himself very well in this race, and maximum possible, I think, for him. A shame he wasn't able to get on that podium, but I think that for him it was definitely a very good result. And just if you want to make sure that you don't blow yourself in a race, just follow Jens Adams, because the guy knows make sure that he still has something left in the last couple of laps, and he did it very well.
Yeah, super strong by the rider who now rides as of course, still as a privateer, but for the Shokovit team. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, that Hollebeek became Shokovit on the podcast, but it's been mentioned about a million times on the GCN broadcast. So in case you didn't know, Jens Arnam's now racing for the Shokovit team. Then, ninth place, Thomas Meen. Definitely a good result for him. He is also a bit of a rider that usually does super well on the climbing courses, at least from what I remember. Last year in Namur, I think he got a top 15 on the Koppenberg. He should have also been in the top 15, and I think he even got a top 10 on the Koppenberg, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So it's definitely a rider that likes the climbing courses. And today he shows that by getting ninth. He, of course, made the transfer to the Hope Factory Racing team. He was on the Tormans team before. He did super well today, and he is another rider that paced himself super good today. He was, I think, 14th, 15th in the beginning of the race, and then he overtook some riders like Seppe Rombouts and Sander de Vet to eventually end ninth, which is definitely a good result for the Brit. Let's go and talk about the women's race then. It was a very weird beginning to the women's race, as the broadcast simply missed the first 8 minutes of the race. I have no clue what happened there, but we joined the action middle in the first lap. It was, however, Marie Schreiber that had the fastest start, but she was quickly caught again by Fem van Empel and Denise Betsema. Van Empel and Betsema looked to be riding away with just the two of them, but Shirin van Anrooy managed to close the gap. It was not long, though, that these three riders were together, as Fem van Empel already before the halfway point of the race opened the gap. She said it wasn't her plan to make it a long solo, but she did. She opened a gap of half a minute pretty quickly and then consolidated that and eventually kept making it a bit bigger. Well, it went up to 1 minute at some point, and then the last lap she took it easy. But Fem van Empel so far is almost unstoppable this season. Only lost one race and now also won on the Koppenberg ahead of Denise Betsema, who managed to drop Shirin van Anrooy in the penultimate lap. As exciting as the men's race was, almost as boring the women's race was, because Fem van Empel really just dominating, and so far she is pretty much untouchable the last couple of weeks.
There's not a lot you can do, and it was again just a very strong ride from her. She was she took it a bit easier at the first passes of the Koppenberg, and then was she just knew what she was doing in a way, and just gradually was forcing a faster pace. Betsema tried to follow, but was just not really able to, and then she just went alone solo and never really stepped her marks or something. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was just, in my opinion, just under a limit and making sure that the gap was there, and she would win the race, but she wouldn't blow herself up, and she did exactly that. And yeah, there's not much else to say. It's another win for Van Empel. That is going into, I think, a dream season for her, and it can only become better with the championships coming up.
Yeah, championship that she will luckily be racing with the elites, but I almost think that she's facing more opposition if she would have raced the under-23 race than if she is racing the elites. Pietersen and Van Anrooy are both racing the under-23 race, whilst Van Empel is in the elite race. We'll go over that a bit more in our preview for the European Championships, but for now, Fem van Empel is untouchable. I don't want to discredit her, but I do think that we should be careful in our expectations. She's being called the new cannibal of cyclocross, of course, a nickname, or at least a nickname reference to Sven Nys, who is nicknamed the Cannibal, as he was such a rider that won so many races, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest. We should always be cautious in our expectations for Van Empel. It's very much possible that the riders who come after her will overshadow her. She's having a very great season now, and she might have a very great season next year. But when Sven Nys came, they were also saying when he was winning 20 crosses in his first season that we were gone for the next 10 years. However, Sven Nys only 2 world titles, which is still a good performance, of course, but people would have expected way more. And after Sven Nys, we had Wellens, Vervecke, both riders that were able to beat him on many occasions. So we should just be careful. Van Empel now might be better than Van Anrooy and Pietersen, but these two might make extra steps which Van Empel can't. We'll just need to wait and see, But for now, really, as you say, it's a dream season for her. The women's Koppenbergcross really was much more of a cross that we are used to seeing on the Koppenberg. Absolutely huge gaps. So if we look at the entire top 10, we can see that back. Van Empel taking the win, almost a minute ahead of Betsema. Van Anrooy third on 1 minute 15. Then fourth place Honsinger on 2 minutes. Fifth place Marie Schreiber, almost 3 minutes down. Van Alphen sixth on 3 minutes. Seventh place, 4.5 minutes down. Isabel Holmgren ahead of Kiona Krabbe, Ava Holmgren and Ella McLean-Howell. Let's not completely forget about the other riders on the podium before we talk about some riders further down. Betsema and Van Anrooy second and third. What were your thoughts on their races, Sam?
Betsema tried to follow Van Empel, failed in that, and then kind of knew that it was going to be a race for second, and sit in the wheel of Van Anrooy for a couple of laps, and then just realized I can get away from Van Anrooy, and did what she had to do, and got second place. The gap is 52 seconds for the classification, but it's not really sure if Van Empel is going to do all X2O trophy races. So I think for her overall it was a solid day, podium which was expected from her, and I think she would be disappointed if she wasn't on the podium today. So I think that overall both of them, also Van Anrooy, did what they had to do. Solid races from both of them, and they did their best, but there was just one better.
Yeah, Betsema did what I kind of expected from her. She's a very versatile rider, so a climbing course, fast course, sand courses, she can do it all. Maybe climbing is not her favorite thing, that would probably be the sand, but it's definitely something that she isn't bad in either. Second place is pretty good. Van Anrooy in third, yeah, I mean, maybe I would have wanted her to win. Well, wanted, yes. Expected, no, not really. I saw already in Maasmechelen that the form was lacking just a little bit, but it doesn't matter. It's a solid start to her season. She will definitely be improving, and the climbing and muddy courses is really the things that should suit her. So we'll see on that. However, I did maybe expect that Clara Honsinger, the American champion, would be up there, since this is a perfect course for her. She, of course, won here last year. She really likes the slow courses where the starts don't matter too much, a bit more of buffeting. This year the course was maybe a bit less ideal because it was less muddy, but fourth place 2 minutes down is maybe a tad disappointing. I think it's a tad disappointing, and it kind of fits in the trend of her season. She's ended 7th, 8th, and 8th in the World Cup she did. Skipped Tabor, 4th now. It's not terrible, but also not super great. However, behind Clara Honsinger, it's really showing that the depth of the field today was just extremely lacking. Schreiber and Van Alphen, 5th and 6th, it's still okay, but behind that we have the Holmgren sisters, and full respect to them. They are juniors, they are racing on the Koppenberg, they are putting in massive effort, and they end in the top 10, completely deserved. But Peterson was on the start list, Vash was on the start list, Worst was on the start list, Alvarado was on the start list, and where were they today? They were at home. I think it is because they had the focus on the European Championships this weekend, but on the classification that is on time, it's, as you said, almost already between 3 riders, and then mainly depending if Van Empel will do all races or not. Where does the X2O trophy stand on the women's side, at least? On the men's side, the big names are there, but on the women's side, is Vlaanders Classics achieving what they want to make the World Cup the only important classification?
Yeah, in the current form, with the Koppenberg as the first race, and always very close to the European Championships, I think you will always have this issue. And I think at the men's category, it was a fast race and it was a bit closer. If it was raining and it was a little bit more muddy, you would have had maybe bigger gaps as well, and then the classification there was also going to be kind of, I wouldn't say done already, because there's still races to go, and tough races as well. But I just think that the current form right now with the World Cup and the Super Prestige, the X2O trophy is kind of it's losing interest in a way, and it's quite visible, especially in the women's category right now, that I think we are missing 5-6 women that should be in the top 10. normally, that you know for a guarantee that will be in the top 10. And that has for a part to do with the Koppenberg, has for a part to do with the European Championships, has for a part to do with the X2O trophy, which for them is not as important as a Super Prestige and definitely the World Cup. And yeah, then you have these kind of fields and these kind of races, and yeah, it's in a way it's a bit disappointing. In another way, like you said, that was kind of the goal of the Flanders Classics, and they want to make the World Cup the most important classification, which it already is, but it just needs to be a little bit more heavy in a way that is very visible, and that nobody will be talking about other trophies and classifications, that the main focus will be on the World Cup. I think that they are, in that way they are almost successful and getting very close to what they want. But I think for the X2O trophy, they might have to rethink a couple of things and look into what changes could be made to make the classification more sustainable, because I think that this classification is a classification with a lot of history. That was the Gazette van Antwerpen, TVV Trofee, B-Post as well. It is something that's heritage in a way of the sport. So I think that is definitely not the solution to just be like, oh, you should just scrap it or don't even look at it anymore. But I think they should look into what is going to be next for them in the coming seasons, and what is the next steps for them to make the classification entertaining.
Yeah, there's multiple factors that go into it, and you mentioned most of them, but I'll go over them rider by rider. First of all, as you say, the Koppenbergcross these days has become too hard to be part of an X2O trophy, which is on time, at least if you want a close and competitive classification. You shouldn't only go to fast courses, but the Koppenberg is so hard. And look now, Honsinger is fourth, 2 minutes down. It's super hard to make up that amount of time. Even a minute is pretty hard. It's not impossible, but if you're a minute plus down, now you're already thinking, oh, it's going to be difficult, and well, with the World Cup where I'm still okay, or the Super Prestige where I'm doing fine, I'm going to focus on these classifications rather than the X2O trophy. And then you have riders that are simply focusing on the World Cup because they think it's more important. Vos, Pieterse, Vash, they're all focusing on the World Cup. Then you have some riders that are injured. Worst, she said something about a back injury. Brandt, who is making her comeback at the European Championships if everything goes well, but she broke her hand, of course, in the Tabor course reckon because she hit a pole. So these factors now all come together, but they should really consider like their position and how are they going to move forward. Maybe alter the course a bit, because now it's super hard, the Koppenberg. The older Koppenberg was still a very hard cross, but a bit more doable in a way for some riders, because Zweig, he's not showing up here because he knows this is a terrible course for him. He doesn't like it. And the conflict with the European Championships will be there as long as they have the date together with the European Championships, because European Championships will always be the first weekend of November and Koppenberg will always be the 1st of November. So how do you go forward? I don't know. Hard to find out, but that's something for the Golazzo organizers to do. So I do want to still mention it again. Isabel and Eva Holmgren, the juniors from Canada, ending 7th and 9th here on the Koppenberg. Maybe not the most depth in the field, but super impressive. Kat Ferguson from the United Kingdom, first-year junior, was also running in the top 10. Ultimately lost out to Ella McLean-Howell, who also put in a massive ride today. Great results by the young riders, and that the depth isn't there means that they have the opportunity to show themselves. And that's something that I even forgot to say. If the X2O trophy wants to be taken serious, they need to improve their coverage. Today the coverage was just straight out terrible. The screen kept flashing black. They even missed like the first 3/4 or maybe even full lap. It's insane. You can't have this happening if you want to be taken serious. So those are things that should be dealt with if they want to be improving. Now back to the racing. Final mention. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot for Ineos starting her season here today. Quite a disastrous start for her, isn't it, this summer?
That's putting it mildly. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest of outings. I mean, look, for her it was just testing in a way. I think that was the way she looked at it. That was also the way how she was answering the answers post race, and She was very clear about that they were testing the material and in general just the feeling on the bike and getting along with the staff and trying just to get a feeling, get the cross feeling kind of back. And she tried that. Obviously, these kind of things happen. The chain drops, then it went into crash mode on the last lap, and she had to run up the Koppenberg. Yeah, it's not. It wasn't ideal, and I think that for her it's not a big deal in general. She was just here to get some laps on her belt to make sure the material was okay, which it wasn't. So they have to go back to the drawing board, check the material again. Then she does the European Championships, and I've heard that after the European Championships she will take some rest and then get going again. I don't know what race she will be starting again, and I hope that it will be quite soon again, because I think that the way she was running on the bike and how it looked, I think that there are still some things that can be a bit smoother. And if she really wants to win a World Championships, which is her goal, her ultimate goal, then I think that there's definitely still some work to do for her, and I definitely look forward to see how she will progress over the season.
She will restart somewhere around Christmas period, so hopefully Val di Sol or maybe a bit earlier. But there's definitely things to be worked on. I think without the mechanicals, without the last mechanical, she ends in the top 10. Without that first mechanical, she maybe is able to get a 5th or 6th place, which is still 3 minutes off Van Empel. I don't expect her to become European champion based off this performance. She only had her bikes for 4 days. The staff, I don't know what they were doing at that stop. They didn't come towards her when there was no pit box assignment. They were just standing there. They had the bike on the wrong side. So whatever. I don't think she seemed too upset about it, but we'll see how that goes for Prevost at the European Championships. I think a top 10 is definitely not off the table, but I'm not expecting a win against this Van Empel. We'll discuss more on that in our European Championships preview podcast, which we will record soon. Issam, thank you so much for being here to discuss the Koppenbergcross.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Cross season well and truly underway. We will be back then again tomorrow with the European Championships preview. Thanks for listening and see you guys soon. Goodbye.